Hello and welcome to another episode of Choose Your Struggle presents A Day in the Life. We have a very incredible guest tonight, Heather Wylde Smith, and as her name suggests, it's gonna be wild. Okay, that's the last time I'm gonna do that terrible joke tonight. As always, we're gonna give people a couple minutes to trickle in, so sit tight, and I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. All right, welcome to the fourth edition of Choose Your Struggle presents A Day in the Life. I am your host, Jay Schiffman, the founder of Choose Your Struggle, the host of these events, A Day in the Life and Rock Bottom Storytellers, as well as the podcast Choose Your Struggle. Now, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time tonight, a couple of introductions and sort of explanations of what's going on. A Day in the Life is one of the two virtual storytelling series I put on. This one, the goal of these events, the goal of A Day in the Life, is simply to return storytelling to people's lives, and in doing so, help them relate to someone that they may not have had a similar experience of. In the past, we've had stories about, living in a trailer park and almost being stabbed. We had my best friend, Spark Tabor, tell the story the first time he was called the N-word. So they've been real stories. And now, tonight, we have a very special guest. She is going to be telling a story about her career in sex work, which is something that I cannot relate to whatsoever, and I'm very interested to learn more. Now, a couple of instructions. No matter where you're watching this, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you can comment and give us your questions. Just if you're on Twitter, just drop a tweet below the video that you're watching. On YouTube or Facebook, just drop a comment, and I will see them. And at the end of Heather's story, I'm going to return and interview her for 10-15 minutes. So that's your chance to get some of those questions in. Now, a couple of other things. Number one, you may see an I with a number at the top of the screen. Ignore it. As much as I love this platform, StreamYard, and I do, StreamYard, if you're hearing this, you're a great platform. It doesn't work well with all of the different social medias that they go on. Perfect example, last time I did A Day in the Life 2 weeks ago, that number never got above 0, and we had over 100 people watch. So if you're seeing this and you're wondering why it still says 0, it's a bug. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but ignore that. So there's that. Also, got to give a huge shout out to my sponsor, my partner, that would be Bookshop. Now, if you haven't heard of Bookshop, it's a pretty great organization. Just like, let's say, oh, I don't know, Amazon, it's an online retailer for books, but here's what they do that makes them so special. Number one, they give money back to people like me. That's right. If you go to this link just below me and you buy a book there, I'll get a proceed from that sale. So that's amazing. But number two, it allows you to choose your favorite bookstore. Now, this could be the bookstore down the street. For me, it's my favorite Black-owned bookstore in Northern Philadelphia, and they will give a cut of that order to that bookstore. So unlike, again, let's say an Amazon, they aren't just trying to keep all the profits for themselves. They're also trying to help your neighborhood bookstore. So please check out Bookshop, and if you do, use the code that you see below me right now, bookshop.org/shop/CYS. Again, that's bookshop.org/shop/CYS. And you can check out all of my favorite books. They're all listed. My bookshop is full of books that you have heard on my podcast. But you can find any book you want there. And it's a great site, and it's my favorite partner for this. So I really do appreciate Bookshop. So that's pretty much it for me. And as I've kind of made clear, this night is not about me. This is about Heather Wylde-Smith. So without further ado, I'm going to bring her on to tell her story. She can give her full introduction, and I promise you this one's going to be good. All right. Heather, welcome to the stage.
Hey Jay, thanks so much for having me on. I've listened to two of these, and I'm kind of nervous because Spark and your other friend did amazing jobs. I'm like, oh God.
Well, it is a good series, and it is going to be made even better by you being here tonight. So without any more from me, everyone's here for you, not for me. I'm going to put myself backstage, and I'm going to listen with everybody else. So Heather, take it away.
And he's just gone, just like that. Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Heather Wylde-Smith, and I am a serial entrepreneur. I have currently, I'm a business coach for purpose-driven entrepreneurs. I have been a limo driver, and tonight I'm going to be talking to you about actually my longest career, I guess, my first really career as an adult, and that was as a sex worker. So, what you need to know to begin with is that I grew up in a really small southern town, very conservative. And at a very young age, I knew I did not belong there. But my family, they very much felt at home there, and we hardly ever left, our small town or very much not the Southeast. So, everything that I knew about the world really came from the world outside of our small Southern Baptist conservative town was from movies and books and TV. And my parents had a knack for letting me see things that I'm not sure I would have let my child see. Okay. So in knowing that I didn't belong in this town, I knew I had to get the fuck out. Like I felt like at any moment, like I knew I was bisexual at a very young age. I knew I did not believe as these the churches that we went to believed, and I knew I had to get out. I felt like at any moment I could be stoned to death for like not belonging. And so I was really smart. I was really good at school, and I decided that at 11 that I was going to be valedictorian of my high school because I knew that I would get scholarships. So very smart, very good in school. Now, my one vice, I was a good kid, but my one vice was I was always very, very, very curious about sex. And I actually started having sex when I was 14. And, but other than that, like I went to school, I did my after school activities, I was a good kid from a good family. Oops, I'm not sure what happened, but I'm back, I think. When I was 15, Pretty Woman came out, and my parents let me go to see it. I think I saw it with like my friend who was, my same age as a neighbor. And from the start of this movie, I was just fascinated. I was like, sex plus money is like the coolest thing ever. And I think that I connected really with Vivian, with Julie Roberts' character a lot, because in the movie, she's actually from Macon, Georgia now. Macon is south of where I grew up, but it was Georgia, right? So I'm watching this movie with my neighbor, and like it gets to the part where they're negotiating what's going to happen after this week is up, that he's paid her this $3,000 to be with him for a week. And he is saying, hey, I'd like to see you again. I'll put you up in a condo. You keep the clothes that I bought you. I'll arrange for you to have transportation. And her counter offer is like, fuck you. I want to be in a relationship. I want the fairy tale. And if you don't want that, then, I'm gone. Now, I'm from this small town. Like, I'm very, like, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't, obviously my parents are letting me watch this movie, so I wasn't that sheltered. But I had no experience like of a lot of these these things. I had no experience of prostitution or sex work or I'd never known any of these people. But at 15 years old, I'm looking at the screen when she's saying that she wants the fairy tale, and I'm like, "Are you fucking crazy? Like, take the money, take the condo, get better clients." So I wasn't a romantic. I was very, very practical, right? So I actually got a chance to watch Pretty Woman this week, and I hadn't seen it in years. And there's a point where she's talking to Edward about how she ended up being a hooker, and she was like, "It's not like anybody plans this. It's not like it's anybody's childhood dream." Well, it kind of was mine. I just thought it looked so cool, but I thought, I'm a good girl, except for the fact that I want to fuck around. But like, like I'm a good kid. I'm a straight A student. I come from a good family. Girls like me don't get into the sex industry. So I never thought that I would actually do it. And one of the reasons why I like to tell my story is because my story is very different than what it's kind of socially acceptable to talk about when you talk about sex workers. So usually like in the news or wherever you're learning about an experience of a sex worker, it's something about somebody being trafficked or a woman that was forced into the industry by a pimp or who wound up in the industry because of drug abuse. And so I tell my story so that people know that that's not always the case, right? That stuff actually it does exist, but it's not the only story, right? So I finished high school and I still had this fascination with sex work, but didn't think I would do it. I did go to school. Did go to college on 2 academic scholarships. The problem was I couldn't figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I think a lot of that was I just didn't want to grow up. But I had no idea what I wanted to major in. My grades were good still, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And then my parents divorced and some kind of madness happened. And I kind of was like, oh, maybe my family's not so good anymore. And that summer after my sophomore year in college, I found myself in Atlanta without adult supervision. I was house sitting for somebody, and I did try to get a couple of regular jobs. I was a good bartender, couldn't find any bartending jobs. Tried to get some restaurant jobs, couldn't get any work, and I really just didn't want to go home. And so I was like, my family's an hour away, and they hate the city, so they'll never come here to find me. And I saw my opportunity. And so I went and I worked as a stripper for 3 whole days. I got accused of being an undercover cop because I looked very, very innocent. And then I worked at a place that was like they call them lingerie modeling shops, but the colloquial term is Jack Shacks because there's a lot of hand jobs that go on there. Um, but I don't really like either of those ways of doing sex work. And I finally got up the nerve and I called one of the escort agencies in town. And this is how like non-pressure it was. So I was so green. Um, it was the term in the 90s. I don't know what the cool hooker slang is these days, but back then I was called green because I didn't know what I was doing. And I went and I met this guy in a parking lot to like sign the contract to go to work for this escorting agency. And I knew I was going to put on makeup and heels and, all this stuff to go to see a client, but it didn't occur to me. Like I'm very book smart, but I had no street smarts whatsoever. It did not, or really common sense. It didn't occur to me that maybe I should be dressed up to actually go to this interview. So I show up at this interview with like my hair not really fixed, no makeup on, like jeans and t-shirt and probably hiking boots. So I look like a college lesbian. And the guy looked at me and like he was like, "Are you sure you know what this is?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally." And like he couldn't really spell it out what it was, but he was like, "Do you know what this is?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so I started working and I fell in love with it. And I had so many like adventures. And one of the things that I loved about it is not only the money, but I'm awkward about getting myself laid, and I was single, so I wasn't really having, any sex. I love sex. So it was like, hey, sex and money at the same time. And I was kind of infamous for enjoying myself a little too much. When I had friends, in the industry that they were not as amused by the work. They hadn't been tricked into it by pimps, whatever. They were staying in it for various reasons, but they didn't really love it. Well, I loved it, and they would get kind of mad at me because I would stay like with my client longer if it was a two-girl call. Like if there were two guys at somewhere and they would send me and another girl, the other girl would frequently get angry with me because I was staying too long because I was trying to get off. And so early in my career, I was more concerned with adventure and orgasms than I was the money. As I got older and met other women and learned more how to tip hustle, how to go in and explain to people why they needed to give me more money if they actually wanted to have sex with me. I became like a lot more concerned with, the money. But me enjoying myself too much actually was a problem with some of my clients. So I'm going to tell you two funny stories about me being in trouble for having too much fun. So, one, this is later in my career, and as I said, I'd learned how to ask for a lot of money. Like it would be $200 to $300 for me to come in the door, and then I learned how to talk people up, and get them to give me, 500 more, 800 more, 1,000 more dollars. And naturally, some of that negotiation could take quite some time. So I was with this guy, and he was like a traveling businessman, very clean cut, attractive guy, which was nice, but a lot of times it was a problem because they felt like they should get discounts. And I'm like, no. And so I'm explaining to him why he needs to give me, like, I think I was asking for 800 more dollars. And it took a while, but he finally like relented. He got out his credit card and I got my tip. I got my upsell. And so, I took pride in my work. Like I love to actually make people have a great time. And so we're having sex, and he was a decent lover, it wasn't anything like spectacular, but I mean, he was, good enough. And like I said, it was kind of cute. And so I'm, enjoying myself. Now, I was portraying that I was enjoying myself a lot more than I actually was, ladies, the key to this, you don't want to really, I don't encourage anybody to fake orgasms because you're just giving these men like, let them know what really works. Okay. Nothing is worse than getting with a guy and he's like, I know how to make chicks come. I've made every girl I've ever been with come. And it's like, oh God, you've had so many women that faked it. Anyway, the key to a good faked orgasm is not going too over the top. Okay. So you don't want to be like, oh God, oh yeah, it's so big. Oh my God. Ah, like, no, that's not what you want to do. You want to like go more understated, like, oh yeah, oh God, oh, don't stop, don't stop. Ah, ah. You know, you want to do it, but you don't want to go like crazy with it. So I had done my understated orgasm and a faked orgasm. And shortly thereafter, he had had his orgasm and everybody was happy. So I thought. So I get him a warm washcloth and I wipe off, I wash him off and like dry off his cock and, just really doing the whole geisha thing. And then I go into the bathroom and I'm taking my horse bath, and I'm like, spraying myself off. And, I'm like, oh, I wonder if I should call my friend. Maybe she's downtown. Maybe we can grab something at a diner, or maybe I should just go home. And, I'm just kind of thinking like, everything's good. Well, the guy walks into the bathroom and he has like this plastic cup with water in it. And before I can ask him, like, what can I do for you? He throws the water in my face. It was tepid. It wasn't hot. It wasn't cold. So I mean, it didn't hurt me. And I was just so shocked that I didn't even get mad. I just laughed. And I was like, what the hell is that for? And he's like, that's for making me pay you 800 extra dollars and then you enjoyed yourself too much. Okay. So That was the traveling businessman. So I had another client that was a local guy, and he actually saw me several times a year over the period of several years. And so we actually got to know each other pretty well. And he was more of what I would call a patron than a client. So a client, sees you once in a while or maybe only once. A patron is somebody that sees you, kind of more frequently, sees you numerous times, and they tend to pay you more over time instead of less. And they're just awesome because you just kind of get to be friends with them, and you just kind of hang out. Well, this guy happened to be really, really great in bed. And but he didn't but he was great in bed because he didn't have problems getting pussy, so he didn't really need to be paying for it. He just liked me, right? So he didn't see me that often. Like, I would see him like several times a year. And so whenever I would see him, I would be so excited to see him. I would be like quite lusty. And we would have sex like several times, over the course of a few hours that we hung out each time, and it was always really good, and I always left very, very happy. Well, we didn't see each other for a lot of years, and we reconnected. And he was like, yeah, Heather, like, I used to get so mad at you. And I was like, what? Like, we never fought. We had nothing to fight about. Like, we had a great time together. What are you talking about? And he was like, you like, every time like we were together, you were like, fuck me harder, fuck me harder, fuck me harder. And he was like, in my mind, I was like, I'm fucking you as hard as I can. And I was cracking up. And I was like, I don't even like to be fucked hard. I was like, I just didn't see you a lot. And I was just hungry and lusty when I saw you. But I asked him, like, I was like, how many women do you think you've been with? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I think it was like, it's definitely in the hundreds. And I was like, am I the most demanding lover that you ever had? He was like, yes. So those are my two stories about being a lusty, happy hooker. And there's tons more. If Jay ever wants me to come back and tell like crazy stories, I can definitely do that. But I share this because when I was first becoming an entrepreneur, I was very intimidated by like all the coaches in the industry. Most of them have like a 9 to 5 corporate background. And I really let it get in my head, that my background was on my back. And so I share my story to amuse and to entertain, but to also let people who have a checkered past, if you've got a police record, if you were a sex worker, or if you were a stripper, if you were a dominatrix, if you were a drug dealer, if you have a criminal past, don't let that define you. Like, come, do what you're here to do, and you can keep doing those things if that's what you love. But if you want to make a difference in the world in a different way, you're absolutely able to do that, and I am living proof. So, Jay, that's all I got. I would love to hear your questions.
Well done. That was incredibly entertaining. I can safely say, for everybody watching at home who may be wondering, yes, that is the first time on any of my platforms that somebody has faked an orgasm. So wonderful. We're setting new ground for Choose Your Struggle tonight. I don't know how, I will say this. I was going to save this for later, but I am taking a couple weeks off from A Day in the Life, and now I have to, because there's no way that whoever goes next, everyone's going to be like, yeah, they were good, but they didn't fake an orgasm, so it's not going to ever be as good as Heather. So seriously, I am taking a couple weeks off, and now I'm really glad that I am. So first question. You have now been retired from this for at least a couple of years, right? So, which means that you started this, because you've talked about doing this for a while, before the internet was a thing, right? I mean, the internet was not a thing.
Well, so the internet was a thing. It was there, but it was early on. So I started in the summer of '96. Yeah.
So the internet was around, but you were not using it the way it is now to find. No. So talk about how hard that was to get work like this before the internet.
So it was actually incredibly easy. So remember this ancient technology called the Yellow Pages?
For real. That's how people. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so the Yellow Pages, all the major agencies had ads in the Yellow Pages, and the Yellow Pages were in every hotel room. Most of our clientele was traveling businessmen. So yeah, if you worked for a good agency and didn't fuck up, it was actually very easy to find work.
But do you mean to tell me that if I was a businessman on a trip in '98, I could go to the Yellow Pages and look up escort? Is that what I'm looking at?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so for anyone listening, if you ever make it into a time machine and come back as a solo businessman in 1998, open what was called the Yellow Pages and look for escort. That's good to know. I would not have even known how to do that. I don't know if I would know how to do that today. Definitely wouldn't have known how to do it in 1998.
I know, it's wild.
So there is a question I think that we see made fun of in movies and in memes a lot, and it's always like, all right, so somebody pays for your time. Well, what do you do? Like, what do you do before and after the sex, right? So you seem to, I mean, as you've made it very clear, this was something you chose to do. So, like, what did you do before and after you hung out with a guy?
Meaning during the session with him, or what was I doing?
Yeah, sorry,
in between?
early in the session, before sex, and after sex while the session continues.
Yeah. So what? So my way of working, like I said, I'm an overachiever. So I came in and I set out candles and I pulled out my CD player. Remember CD players? I had a portable CD player and put on like some Sade. Then I would actually go change into some lingerie and then come back out, and I would actually massage my clients and get to know them, because I was fascinated by people. I grew up in this small town, so it was really fascinating to meet these people that traveled all over the world doing business. And then I would calmly explain to them, like, hey, if you want something more than this, if you want a hand job, a boob job, a blow job, or sex, you have to give me more money. And so the first part was spent doing that. And then usually a credit card had to come out, and I had to like make an imprint of a credit card, and we were talking ancient technology. I learned how to do this with the back of, there was a special kind of pen, like there was a certain kind of office pen that you could make really good imprints of credit cards with. So and I didn't have a drug problem when I entered the industry. I did develop a drug problem while I was in the industry, but it was never like keeping me there. Like it wasn't like a slave to it. It was just like, I like drugs and I like sex and I like money. It was perfect. But I was extraordinarily...
It's a good combination.
I mean, yes, in your 20s, not so much. And, but yeah, so I was doing this like all incredibly high. I don't know how I did it. But yeah, so then, we would move on to whatever act they had ponied up the money for. And then sometimes, they lasted for the entire hour. Sometimes God help me. Sometimes, the negotiations lasted, most of it. I know there was a pitcher for some Major League Baseball team that was beautiful. And we argued, but argued for like 45 minutes over him giving me a tip. He finally gives me the tip. And I'm like, you're just going to come quick anyway. And he looked me dead in the eye and he was like, I will put you up against every wall in this room, and I will not come until you tell me to. And I was like, okay, please sign.
I wish you remembered the name of this pitcher. That would make that story even more amazing.
You know what? I kind of thought that I did, but I've looked him up and I can't find him. But no, I wouldn't out somebody like that. But yeah, so sometimes it was like that. And sometimes, they would orgasm rather quickly. And some people, wanted to cuddle. They wanted to talk. And like in our culture, it's acceptable for a man to say, I want an orgasm, but it's not acceptable for him to say, I'm lonely, I want some company.
Fair.
And so really for a lot of them, like the sex was a cherry on top. Like they definitely wanted the sex, but they actually wanted somebody to come and just be a human being. And like, I really looked at it as a healing profession. It was, a chance to offer somebody companionship and human touch, and my favorite thing was when people wanted to cuddle afterwards, and when I would leave, they would be like, you really brightened my day. And I'm like, thank you.
Well, you very clearly you've always been a person to bring joy to others, and this was just a great way for you to do that.
It was.
So, you mentioned the word stigma, which, of course, as my listeners and watchers know, is literally one of the two sort of stated goals of the company Choose Your Struggle. And this is how you and I got to know each other, was actually talking about our shared struggle with substance misuse. But you touched on the stigma around sex work that we hear all the time. It's the reason people always push back against legalizing sex work, because they say, oh, those poor women are just being trafficked and there's all violence. Now, we obviously know that does happen, of course it happens. But it's the same way that that sort of straw man is used to deny legalizing sex work, as the images were shown of like extreme addiction is to legalizing drugs, right? So I'm not going to ask you to speculate on percentages, numbers, whatever, because that wouldn't really be fair to you. What I do want to know is, obviously, you've been telling us a lot about all the amazing parts of sex work, but every job has downsides. So what were the downsides to sex work? Did you ever experience violence? Was there ever situations that you really felt unsafe while doing this?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I had big adventures and I had a lot of fun, but was it dangerous? Oh hell yes. The agencies that I worked with, like, they were calling to check in. They, did have you, check driver's license, so you kind of knew who you were with, and they would call. I did have situations where they called the police because I wasn't picking up my phone, so it was less dangerous in some ways, but I did experience some scary situations. I did go to jail a couple of times. I did have one violent rape, actually, and fortunately was able to get that guy put away. He's in prison now, thank God, because he was serially preying on sex workers. He had actually just gotten out of prison 5 months previously for raping a dancer. So, yeah, there is danger. It's not all sunshine and puppies. Definitely not. Yeah, I mean, there's crazy shit. Now, I when I was in sex coaching school, I met a girl who was an escort.
Time out. All right. I want to hear the rest of the story, but did you just say sex coaching school?
Yeah.
I've never heard those three words in the same phrase before. Sex coaching and school are usually the opposite and any sort of conversation. So please finish that story, but also tell us about sex coaching school.
Absolutely. So I met a woman who was in my class. It was actually really cool because Jessica Drake from Wicked Pictures was actually in my class as well, and I got to meet her at an in-person event where in the sex coaching school, we went to West Hollywood and we watched porn all weekend in this room full of people, so that people that were not very experienced with sex and hadn't led such crazy lives as I had, could actually be exposed to all these different parts of human sexuality that they hadn't previously known about. But in fact, so this woman, she was a super high-end escort, and she had started out, her rate was like $2,000 for 2 hours, $10,000 for the first day, $4,000 for each additional day, plus all her travel expenses. And even when she and I talked, like, she had some kind of crazy experiences, but nothing compared to what I experienced on my kind of like mid-level sex work. And it was so funny. I was like, have you ever been arrested? Have you ever had this happen? And she was like, no, because I did it right. And I was like, bitch. But then I stopped and I thought about it and I was like, no, she's right.
Well, I'm sorry that you did experience that, because it sucks that, obviously, for anyone, like, that's a horrible thing to go through. But more than that is that we've all had bad days on the job. That's a really bad day on the job.
That was a really, really, really bad, scary day. But I was really, really lucky because I talked him into using a condom, and they still put him away. So I was like the luckiest rape victim ever. Like, it was over in 20 minutes. The cops got him that night. He's been off the streets since then. I didn't have to worry about being pregnant or, having a disease. So it was horrible, but it could have been so, so, so much worse.
Well, again, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but it does sound like, for you at least, the positive far outweigh the negative, which is wonderful to hear.
Yeah. And by that time, like, I had been in recovery and I had a lot of tools to like help myself process it. I did get some therapy. I really had a huge support network at the time. And so it wasn't nearly as traumatic for me as it could have been, for someone else. I was just, but not that it was a good thing. But on to the happier topic of sex coaching school. So, I had gone to coaching school, like life coaching school, and I was a really good coach, but I didn't know what I wanted to do as far as like niche. And finally I was like, well, I know a lot about sex, and I think sex is really sacred and healing and wonderful. So I was like, maybe that'll be my niche, and did a Google search, and Sex Coach Institute is what it was called. I'm not sure what it's called today. I think they were the only one at the time. Of course, they were, it was online, but of course they were based in Southern California. And I contacted them and I'm like, hey, I'm a coach, blah, blah, blah. And I was a sex worker for 16 years. At that time, I think I'd probably been in the industry for like 10 or 11 years. And they were like, well, we had level 1 and 2. I think we're going to bump you up to the advanced. I was like, thanks.
So is it fair to say then that you skipped a grade in sex coaching school?
I did. I skipped the whole level, skipped right into advanced, and even a lot of that, like it was a good curriculum. Like they were, the people who did it, they had masters in human sexuality, and it was really good information. But a lot of it was, really basic. Like there was this whole, thing on like homosexuality, and I was like, I've been in the gay rights movement since I was 19. Like I've lived this. Like, yes, next.
Well, I going to sex coaching school sounds like an experience that none of us will ever have, and I will say that when you write your autobiography, it needs to be like subtitled, I skipped a grade in sex coaching school. Speaking of that, we're going to finish on, we got a couple of comments, but we're going to finish on this one, which is that they ask, you should teach classes on how to be demanding and own it. That is their comment. So that's, I know you do webinars, Heather, so maybe that's your next webinar is how to be demanding and own it.
Harder.
Well, there we go. We don't even need to go to the lesson anymore. We've had it. So, Heather, thank you so much. Before we finish, now I know people can see your one link at the bottom. Please spend a couple of minutes talking about where people can find you, how they can work with you in different ways, all that kind of stuff.
All the things. So Facebook is where I hang out the most. And so this facebook.com/Heather Wylde Coach is really the best place. I am on Instagram and it's also at Heather Wylde Coach. I do have a website, heatherwylde.com, but I haven't rebranded it yet. So it's a bit of a mess. But you can go and you can see like the sales courses and stuff that I offer. So my passion is helping purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are in the industry or in whatever they're doing, but I usually work with coaches and healers who want to make a big impact as well as having a big bank account. And so my specialties are like teaching people how to sell in a way, helping them customize the way they sell and do it according to their values instead of the sociopathic sales that gets taught so often in the industry. And helping people to uncover patterns that are sabotaging their business and helping them make their business more fun, like advanced entrepreneurs, established entrepreneurs, helping them make their business more fun and help them make things work better. So yeah, I'm going to be putting together a masterclass about these topics in the next couple of weeks. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but come follow me on Facebook. You'll hear all about it.
Follow her on Facebook. I do. And I was, my wife was asking me earlier how we got connected and I couldn't even remember, but I've learned a lot from you in the short time we've been connected and even more tonight. So thank you for that. thank you everyone else for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this one. As I said earlier, I am taking a couple weeks off from this. Usually this is every 2 weeks. I'm going to wait about a month because I've just got a busy schedule between now and then. But also because after tonight, no one's going to be able to top this. So it'll give people some time to, let this simmer a little bit in their memories and hopefully, forget it just a little bit to not have such a high bar for the next person to live up to. So
you saying that I'm forgettable? Oh.
I'm saying that it's going to take people extra long to forget this one. And I know I speak the truth there and for most people. Heather, thank you again for coming tonight. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Jay. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks, everybody.